Well, hello everybody and welcome to Jeff's Baking Blog. Today I'm going to be making some cupcakes. These are going to be a vanilla cupcake, but inside I'm going to put, after they've cooked, I'm going to put some passion fruit curd and then top with the passion fruit buttercream. So the first thing I'm going to need to do is to make the curd. Now I should say you could use any curd. You could use shop bought passion fruit curd or lemon curd or any curd you like, but I'm going to make this passion fruit curd, and for that the ingredients are 8 medium egg yolks. That would be large in the USA. Just get a spatula and scrape down to get all the yolk out of the jug if I can. And then I have 200 grams of granulated sugar, and I'm just going to whisk those together to break up the eggs first of all, just like that. And into that I'm going to sprinkle 1/4 teaspoon of salt. That helps to bring out the flavour, of course. And I'm going to add 160 millilitres of passion fruit curd. Sorry, passion fruit puree, should I say, not curd. It's the curd we're trying to make. And just stir that around. I also have 140 grams of butter, which I'm not going to use just yet. So the next thing I'm going to do is to put this onto a bain-marie. So that's a pot of boiling or simmering water, and I'm going to put this bowl on the top, and I'm going to whisk it continuously until it all starts to thicken, and then I'm going to add the butter in and stir it in until the butter melts. So let's get on and whisk this on the bain-marie. Now I should say this curd is going to make more than I need for the cupcakes, so I have sterilised a jar so that I can put the remainder into a jar and use that later. I should think half this amount is what I would need for 12 cupcakes, but I wanted to make a good batch so that I have some that I can spread on some toast as well. Now that has thickened up very nicely, as you can see. It's coating the back of the spoon. So I'm going to take that off the heat, and I'm going to stir in the butter. So I'll put the butter in. Now if you find yours is curdling a bit, you can put it through a wire sieve to take out any eggy lumps. Mine looks to be fine. So that's the curd. Now, as you can see, it's runny again now because of the melted butter, but as we let that cool down, it will thicken up again, and that will be ideal to go into our cupcakes. So I'm going to let that cool down completely, and while that's cooling down, we'll get on and make the cupcakes. As we allow our curd to cool down and firm up nicely, we'll get on and make the the cupcakes. And the ingredients for the cupcakes are 195 grams of flour, half a teaspoon of baking powder and a quarter of a teaspoon of salt, 60 millilitres of milk, I'm using whole milk, 113 grams of softened butter, unsalted. If you're going to use salted butter, then you can leave the salt out that I mentioned earlier. 130 grams of caster sugar, the zest of a lemon, 3 medium eggs, that would be large in the USA, and a teaspoon of vanilla extract. So the first thing I'm going to do is to put the salt and the baking powder and the lemon zest into the flour, and I'm just going to stir that round with a whisk to get the baking powder and salt mixed through and the lemon zest broken up into the flour. Then I'm going to set that aside while we get on mixing the butter. So we need to put the butter into our stand mixer. You can do this all by hand, of course, or with a hand mixer, but a stand mixer makes it that bit easier. And then I'm just going to give that a little bit of a whisk. And just scrape it down. And I'm going to put the sugar in as well, and I'm going to beat that until the sugar and butter are nice and fluffy and all combined. Okay, so that's the butter and sugar mixed. And I should say that I have my oven preheated at 180 Celsius, that's 160 Celsius with a fan, 350 Fahrenheit, and I've lined a 12-hole muffin tin with paper cases ready to take the batter. So then I'm going to add the eggs one at a time and give those a good mix as well. I'll just scrape down that bowl again at this stage. Now that's all mixed together. So we now add our flour mixture and our milk alternating. So a third of the flour, half the milk, a third of the flour, half the milk, and the last third of the flour. Again, scraping down to make sure that the flour gets mixed in properly. So about a third of the flour. and half the milk. That's mixed well enough, and I'll give it a final mix with my spatula before I put it into the muffin cases. Just to get the flour off the side of the bowl. So that's ready to go into the muffin cases. So what I'm going to do is just take an ice cream scoop and evenly divide the mixture into the cases. So having divided it roughly equally, we just level off the tops a little bit, and they're ready to go into the oven and bake for 17 to 20 minutes until they're springy to the touch and a skewer in the centre comes out clean. Check after 15 or 16 minutes, but 17 minutes to 20 minutes should be enough. So I'll be back with you when they've come out of the oven, and we'll go on to the next. I'm back with you, and our cupcakes have come out of the oven and they've cooled down nicely. So we can go on to making the buttercream. So I have in my bowl 113 grams of softened butter, and I'm going to add in 230 grams of icing sugar, which I have sifted to make sure there's no lumps in it. And I'm going to very gently start mixing that together. And as I mix it, I'm going to add in 2 tablespoons of passion fruit puree, so that's the buttercream nicely mixed. Now if you find it softer or wetter than you like, you can always add more icing sugar. That will thicken it up. Or if it's not loose enough, you can add a little bit more passion fruit puree or a drop of milk or cream just to loosen it. But I think that looks fine. So I'm going to put that into a piping bag, which I've fitted with a star tip or a star nozzle. So with our muffins, I have my puree in this piping bag, and I have a nozzle which is designed for pushing into the cake to force the puree in. But If you don't have that, you can just take the tops out with an apple corer or with a knife, put the puree in and then put some of the top back in. But I'm going to try this method. So I'm going to poke a hole into, whoops, that wasn't very good. Poke a hole in and then squeeze some puree. So, having squeezed our curd into each one, I'm just wiping the tops. And then, with our buttercream icing, I'm just going to cover each one. So that's our passion fruit cupcakes with the buttercream icing. Now here is a jar of the curd, which is setting quite nicely, and I actually got 2 jars of this size out of that mixture, plus the amount that I've used to put inside the cupcakes. So if you just like to make the curd, that will be ideal. And I'm going to let these chill in the fridge just to firm that icing up a little bit before I serve them. That's going to be it for this recipe. I hope you've enjoyed it, and if you have, please give me the thumbs up below the video and click to subscribe to my YouTube channel. In the top right hand corner of the screen there will be a link that will take you to my blog so you can see the recipe, and I'll also put a link to that below the video, and I will be back with you with another recipe in the very near future. So until then, happy baking.